I believe this is Clint Eastwood's second movie to come out this year. He had the 1517 to Paris back in February, which I did not see. Then he had the Mule, and I heard the 1517 to Paris wasn't that good. I didn't get a chance to check it out, so I can't speak on that movie. But I did see this one, so I can speak on this one. I'm John Hayeck, and welcome to my movie thoughts. The Mule. So this movie stars Clint Eastwood. It's also directed by Clint Eastwood. And Clint Eastwood is almost 90 years old in real life. And in this movie, he plays a 90-year-old drug mule. The guy has not necessarily spent a ton of time with his wife and daughter throughout all the years. You know, it's a granddaughter, too, who's in her early to mid-20s, I think. The granddaughter likes him, but the ex-wife and the daughter do not like him because he spent all of his time dedicated to his gardening and to hanging out with his friends and to trying to do his best for his family, but really just being selfish. But now, since his granddaughter's getting married and maybe having a kid, he wants to show that he is there for his family, so he starts running drugs for the cartel from, I believe, Texas to Chicago or vice versa, and making a ton of money that can help financially support his daughter and do some good for the community around him and everything. And I think this movie relies heavily on Clint Eastwood's performance, and I think he is great in the movie. You feel like, oh, he's just a sweet old man and everything, but then you can see, like, oh yeah, no, he feels terrible that he wasn't there for his ex-wife and his daughter when they really needed him when his daughter was growing up and when he was in the critical years of his marriage and everything, and that just broke, and at a point he felt like he couldn't do anything about it, and you feel bad for the guy in that way because, you know, he was doing what he thought was best at the time, but now he realizes that it's not what's best, and seeing him like really come back around and put his family first by the end of this movie, you're like, yeah, you have undergone the arc that your character was meant to undergo, and I really appreciated that. It's a shame it took the drug cartel to actually help you figure it out, but like, it's good to see that you figured it out. Speaking of the drug cartel, the action in this movie is pretty interesting as well. I like seeing Clint Eastwood be put into this like pretty casual drug running situation because he's like a pretty oblivious guy and he just wants to go from point A to point B. He loves to drive, so he'll do that and just make sure that he can get some money along the way. And when he realizes kind of what he's into, you just feel like he realizes he's in way over his head, and he wants to keep doing what he's doing in a pretty casual way. But the cartel's like breathing down his neck and everything, and you're like, oh man, like, I'm rooting for this guy, I'm rooting for him to reconnect with his family and everything, but is this cartel gonna get in the way? Are they gonna mess him up if he gets, like, you know, if he does something a little bit too wrong for them? And it was tense stuff seeing his interactions with the cartel members, especially some of the higher ranking ones who kind of take matters into their own hands a little more than they should and everything, so I really dug that. I'll tell you guys this though, despite how much I really liked the plot of this movie, and how much I really enjoyed Clint Eastwood's character and his arc and everything, there are some issues with this movie that were pretty obvious. First of all, I think that Clint Eastwood's ex-wife and his daughter characters, both of them are insanely annoying. Like, you can tell in the first 20 minutes of the movie, they're both so over-exaggerated. Like, Clint Eastwood shows up to, like, his daughter's, like, wedding reception or something like that, and they immediately go to leave. Or he shows up to like, his granddaughter's graduation, and he sits down next to his daughter, and his daughter immediately gets up and, like, moves over to away from him. I'm like, nobody hates their grandfather or their parent that much. There has to be way more to it than just that. He is making an effort to come back into their lives at this point, and like, if you're gonna hold grudges against him, that's just an unlikable thing to do. I felt like the way that they delivered their dialogue too, and more on the dialogue in a second, but the way they delivered their dialogue too just did not feel sincere whatsoever. I felt like it was them reading off pages and them just being as generically hateable people as they could be, and that helps you get behind Clint Eastwood's character a bit. But I'm like, man, if my ex-wife was that annoying, if my daughter was that annoying, I want to be gone all the time too. Like, these sound like horrible people, and like, you know, I kind of felt bad for Clint Eastwood in that way. But I think there might have been some miscasting. If you got more sincere actors who you kind of gave more understandable actions to, that would be that would have improved the quality of their relationship a bit. By the end of the movie, things do kind of get a bit better with the daughter and the ex-wife character, but it's a little bit too little too late at that point, so I'll just say that. The other thing, speaking back to the dialogue in this movie is not always that great. I think once Clint Eastwood kind of gets on the road doing these drug runs, I think it's better, but the first, like, acts to half of the movie is just rough. It feels like it's super basic stuff. Like, Bradley Cooper plays like a DEA agent in the movie who's like coming in to investigate the whole thing, and he walks into a supervisor's office. Lawrence Fishburne is a supervisor in this case, and he walks in, and Lawrence Fishburne like hangs up the phone, and he's like, Agent Bates, we are so happy to have you on this case. And then Cooper's character is like, oh yeah, well, I'm happy to be here. Anything that I can do to help. And it just feels so wooden, and it feels so generic and everything. And also, to that degree, Michael Pena's character is supposed to be like the experienced DEA agent. Bradley Cooper's supposed to be the new guy, but it feels like the complete opposite in this case. Like, Cooper knows what he's doing, and Pena's usually pretty quiet, just like taking a couple photos and everything. So that was a little bit odd. There were a few other like weird things throughout the movie too, where like a lot of the humor in the movie does work quite well, which I think is great. But there were some lines where I'm like, that feels a little offensive to put out in 2018. I don't know if Clint Eastwood like knew what he was doing, or if the line was supposed to be sent a different way, but it felt like a little bit maybe belonged in the 80s or 90s or way before that, because it was kind of in bad taste, aimed at certain demographics that I was not totally on board with. So I'll tell you guys this, The Mule, overall, it's a fine movie. I don't think it's a movie you need to rush out to the theater and see, but it'll be perfect to catch on FX or TNT at some point, because Clint Eastwood's arc you get behind, you understand his character, you understand his character's motivation, and you're really on board for that. His journey in the movie, too, is really great, because you want to make sure that this sweet old man who's just trying his best to do right for his family and to make amends with them isn't just gunned down by all these cartel goons and everything, and you like that. Seeing Bradley Cooper kind of crack the case was interesting, and him and Eastwood have kind of an interesting relationship, so I liked seeing their relationship kind of play out towards the climax of the movie. That was pretty cool. But the ex-wife character and the daughter character, I think, were completely misacted. I think some of their actions were a little bit over the top, and the dialogue in the movie overall for the first quarter to half of the movie just did not work for me at all. It felt super wooden. It felt like super basic. It felt like it was something that was probably from a first screenplay of somebody. I'm sure it wasn't, but it just felt that way. It felt really, really, really just grinded down to appease middle America and exactly show them what was happening at that moment. And audiences are smarter than that, so I wish the screenplay was a little bit smarter than that. But guys, The Mule, overall, not a bad time. Better than I was expecting. From what I understand, it's probably better than the 1517 in Paris, but I probably shouldn't speak on the movie since I haven't seen it. Either way, let me know your thoughts on The Mule in the comment section down below. You guys can go over to mymoviethoughts.com, follow me on Twitter at John Hayeck, and subscribe to the YouTube channel for tons more posts from me. Links to all three of those in the description down below. You guys can also like this video, comment on it, share it with some friends. I am John Hayeck, so thank you guys so much for watching.